Pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order dated March 17, 2020, the City Council is authorized to hold public meetings via teleconferencing and to make meetings accessible electronically to all members of the public seeking to observe and to address the legislative body. All Brown Act provisions that require the physical presence of the City Council members or the public for the City Council meetings are waived. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oral communications. Members of the audience are invited to address the City Council on any item not on the agenda. Under the provisions of the Brown Act, the legislative body is prohibited from taking or engaging in discussions on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. However, your concerns may be referred to a staff or set for discussion at a later date. If you desire to address the City Council on any item on the agenda other than the scheduled public hearings items, you may do so at this time or ask to be heard when the agenda item is considered. Comments on public hearing items will be considered when the item is scheduled for discussion. The public comments period is limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker shall be limited to 3 minutes. John. Thank you.
Thank you for calling. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Good evening, City Council and members of the audience. There are a lot of propositions to vote for this November. However, there is one proposition you should definitely vote for. That's Proposition 24. Proposition 24 is the Californians for consumer privacy. Proposition 24 will safeguard your online information from nefarious third parties who buy this information from big companies. Proposition 24 will expand the state's consumer privacy laws by allowing consumers with an opt-out for having their personal information from being used for advertising or marketing, prohibits businesses' retention of personal information for longer than reasonably necessary, and triples the maximum penalties for violators concerning consumers under age 16. Finally, Proposition 24 will create the Privacy Protection Agency to protect you from violators who want to exploit your privacy without your consent. On November 3rd, remember to vote for consumer rights. Vote yes on 24. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll give it about a minute. Being advised there are no additional callers. Consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion unless a member of the City Council requests a separate discussion.
Move approval.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to have, I think there's a couple items on the consent calendar. D, which is about the vehicle miles traveled. And you might remember that Zoom presentation we had a month or so ago. That's item D. Yes. And then item E, downtown street closures for the holiday event filming. I think both of those, first of all, it's great for the public to know about them. But D, we should hear a little report on that, I believe, because it was kind of unclear what we were talking about last time. And I think we should all hear that. And then E is closing Bonita for a whole day. And in the past, this kind of thing has come to the City Council so that everybody knows what's going on. And if anybody has an opinion on that, it's good to hear what it is. So I'd like to just take those off the consent calendar, have a brief report on them. Not that I'm against them, but I just like to have a brief report.
Any objection to?
And then I'm going to be having to abstain or recuse myself from item B. It's on the consent calendar, so I don't have to leave the room. But 3B, which is the contract with Cosmont. And then lastly, there's a little but important correction I'd like to make in the minutes of April 14th, and that's on page 2 at the bottom, and just wanted to correct the spelling of Lori's name. So my wife, it's just Lori without the E at the end.
Lori.
Thanks. And
All right.
I think Ryan already made a motion. I would second that motion to approve the rest of the city count of the consent.
As amended.
So we're going to hold item D and item E for further discussion.
Yeah, just to get a report.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. John, you want to start with item D?
Yes, I mean, I don't have comments on it. I just wanted staff to maybe let us know what it is.
Okay, Mayor, City Council, our planning manager, Fabiola, will be giving a brief report on item
Okay.
D.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. If you recall, back on September 22nd, we brought this item in front of Planning City Council for discussion, and it's vehicle miles travel, which is Senate Bill 743. Basically, what it does is eliminates vehicle miles, eliminates vehicle delay as the metric to determine significant impacts under CEQA. And what it does is changes into vehicle miles travel, which the state believes is the best or most appropriate metric to use in order to determine traffic-related impacts. So, so SB 743 doesn't affect planning, design, or the process except for CEQA and the disclosures that are made under CEQA. SB 743, the intent is of the legislation is to ensure that environmental impacts are properly addressed related to traffic, which is noise, air pollution, air quality, and greenhouse gas emissions, and also to balance the needs of congestion management with the statewide goals related to infill development, promotion of public health through active transportation, and reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So lead agencies have to adopt thresholds, and there's different ways that lead agencies can do that. So one is to follow the Governor's Office in Planning and Research, OPR, technical advisory that they put together for cities to use, for jurisdictions to use. And then lead agencies can create their own thresholds if they want, based on the lead agency air quality, greenhouse gas reduction, and energy conservation goals, or consistent with their general plan, what their general plan growth will be, and based on a baseline of VMT performance by jurisdiction. So OPR recommends that per capita or per employee, VMT that is 15% below of existing development, that should be reasonable in order to achieve the statewide goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and to better manage congestion. So there are some tools to reduce VMT, and that's transportation demand management, site design, location efficiency, diverse line uses, and regional infrastructure such as the GO line station that is going to be coming into the city. So lead agencies have two options to implement SB 743. One is to rely on the OPR technical advisory, which we gave you a copy back in September 22nd. I'm sure you all read it. And on page 10 of that technical advisory, it has basically the thresholds that cities can use, which is the 15% reduction from baseline. And option 2 is that each city sets their own threshold, that it has to be based on significant evidence that you are achieving the statewide goals. A few cities have done their own thresholds, and typically are the bigger cities like Pasadena, Burbank. They have developed their own modeling. So for the city of San Dimas, the staff is recommending that we follow the OPR technical advisory, which basically has already analyzed the evidence that adopting a threshold below the 15% of the city's baseline will be consistent with the state goals. As such, that's what staff is recommending tonight for City Council adoption. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I think one thing that, from your explanation now, Fabiola, that I wasn't quite clear on was the 15% below baseline. So what does baseline mean as far as vehicle miles traveled or whatever measure we're using?
Yeah, it is based on whatever the city turns out to be, based on where we're at, on what is the average based on the study that was done by the county and the SCAG. Basically, when we hired the consultant, what it comes out to be the average vehicle mile travel per employee or per resident, it's about 23 miles per day.
23 miles per day is the average that people who live in San Dimas, work in San Dimas, or go outside of San Dimas to work.
Right.
So you average all that out, and they came up with, of course, they know what they're doing, but they came up with 23 miles as an average for what people travel every day in their cars. Okay.
And so there are some, if you look at your staff report too, what it does, if we adopt OPR recommendations, everything that is on table 1 will kind of be what is called screens out. Doesn't need any further analysis. And so that is basically the thresholds that the city will be establishing. And also too, it gives you some other uses that will be screen out or exempt, which is like schools, local parks, daycare centers, local serving retail uses less than 50,000 square feet. So it gives you some of those that also will be screened out, which those are included in the resolution that if you decide to adopt these thresholds tonight are included. For bigger projects, the ones that don't get screened out, then we have the city is participating in a tool that is being developed by Fear and Peers, which is the consultant we had hired to assist us with this process. And the tool will give us, those are for smaller projects. And so we'll be able to see whether there are significant impacts that cannot be mitigated or if whether they could be mitigated. For those uses that cannot be mitigated, we still got to do a full analysis and run a model that has been developed by SCAG. So that's when you'll have to do a full analysis.
And do we run that model ourselves, or do we have a consultant do that?
The tool, we will be able to do it.
Okay.
A full model, we will have to hire a traffic consultant.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for explaining that. And Jeff, I don't know if we need to have callers on this or not, since we had a report, or was it covered under consent calendar?
It was covered under consent calendar.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I would certainly move we don't have a choice of adopting something, and this is certainly the easiest and probably most effective way for San Dimas to go. And I would move approval of this. Was there a resolution?
Item D.
Yeah, I guess we need to read the title of the resolution.
Since it was on the consent calendar, do we need to read this because we wouldn't have read it otherwise because it was on the consent calendar?
That's right. It's not necessary to read it aloud.
Then I would move approval of Resolution 2020-58.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to item E, the downtown street closure for holiday evening event filming.
Mayor, City Council, our Public Works Director, Sherry Garwick, will present this item.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight, for your consideration, is a request to close Bonita Avenue from Cataract to San Dimas Avenue and Monte Vista from Railway to First Street on November 5th for filming for a Parks and Recreation event. The closure would be from approximately 5 p.m. on Thursday the 5th to 6 a.m. on Friday the 6th. Normally, the Parks and Recreation sponsors a holiday festival. Last year was known as the Holiday Extravaganza, which occurs in December. This year, due to COVID, Parks and Recreation had to get creative, and they've come up with an event called the 12 Days of San Dimas. So that event's it's a virtual and interactive event, and they'll start on the first day will start on December 5th, and it'll go through the 17th, I believe. So, but in order to do the event, they have to record the tree lighting ceremony, some caroling, as well as some band events. So their intent is to do all this recording on November 5th, between the hours of 5 p.m. and then 6 p.m. on November 6th. In resolution number 10-64, City Council has given authorization for those roads to be closed for certain events. Among the events was the holiday festival and the holiday extravaganza. However, this year, because it has to be filmed ahead of time, the closure is actually in November. So that's why staff wanted to bring it for council's approval, because it is outside of the normal operating parameters. So with that, if you have any questions.
So, go ahead. So we'd be closing the street 2 weeks early, 3 weeks early.
Actually, it's probably about a month early.
Okay.
So, and it is only in the evening hours. A lot of the businesses are closed at that time, around that time, 5 p.m. So we did work with Parks and Recreation to try to mitigate and shorten the duration of the closure.
And that's good to know. So that starts at 5 p.m.
Yes.
And then it could go all night, we're thinking. Now, for the 5 p.m., did staff talk with some of the downtown merchants who might be affected?
So the intent is, once we get your approval, or if you decide to give approval, Parks and Recreation will talk with all the downtown businesses and notify them.
Have we had any contact with them at all?
Regarding this closure, no. I am not aware that Parks and Rec has.
Is the mayor's little videos have been a hit? Does he have some sort of jingle caroling part in this virtual 12 days event?
I really don't think that's going to happen.
We're all going to have parts in it.
The people demand to see the mayor with a caroling hat.
I will let Jay Jones know.
Awesome.
Yeah, if we could, the more notice, obviously, the better for the business people.
Right.
So,
What they film on that day is going to be shown over many different days, not just in one day. So
Right.
they want to get it all done at one time so they can put it together, and also so it'll be more convenient for the merchants.
super. Dennis, are you a part of that committee?
Yes.
Thank you.
And you mentioned bands. Are they going to be limited to, 5 to 10 p.m. or something, or are the nearby residents going to be hearing bands all night long?
I will make sure that concern is addressed with Jay. If you want to limit the bands to stopping at 10 p.m.
Well, I'm just saying that's why I wanted to have this, reported on so people can know about it and plan accordingly and get excited or not or whatever. But
Mayor and City Council, the band is scheduled to go from the first thing. The reason they want to set up, they got to get them. The band has to get set up, be ready to go. But that is one of the first things that they're going to shoot. To hopefully have that done by 10.
Yeah.
The other stuff is they're filming carolers at different areas. The tree lighting to get that when the tree lights to get that on camera, on film, to be able to virtually show that later on. But the band is supposed to be one of the first things that are shown to limit the nuisance or the noise.
perfect. All right. Thanks a lot.
Don't let the Grinch steal Christmas.
Okay, and I apologize, I have one correction to what I just said. The last day is on December 19th for the actual event, so it runs from Saturday, December 5th through Saturday, December 19th.
And so how is that actually going to be displayed on Channel 3?
Yes, it's going to be on Channel 3. It's also going to be streamed online, and every day is going to come out with a new, of the 12 days, something new, whether that's a virtual house decorating, different kids virtually sitting on Santa Claus. There's also different carolers. So all during that week for 12 days, there's going to be different things that are advertised or on the cable channel and also streamed, and they'll be replayed throughout the holiday season.
Great. Well, yeah, I would move we approve the street closure for that time period.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes 5-0. Item E. So that concludes our consent calendar.
Did we need to go back to item B?
Pardon me?
Do we have to go back to item B, boy, because John was recusing himself from it? Okay,
Yeah, he just,
got it.
he'd walk out the door, we'd do it, and he'd walk back in.
Consent calendar, you don't have to do the whole shenanigans.
Okay. Other business? Approval of contract for flock safety and automated license plate readers, ALPR usage and privacy policy, in the amount of $27,500.
Yeah, Mayor, City Council, our Administrative Services Manager, Michael O'Brien, is going to present on this item.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Michael O'Brien, Administrative Services Manager. And John, just a note, on the band that's going to be playing, the music won't be amplified, so hopefully the community won't be hearing too much loud noise from that. So that should give them a little bit of ease come 10 p.m. But back to this report. Apologize. The City of San Dimas, in conjunction with the San Dimas Sheriff Department, have met with Flock Safety, an automated license plate reader, sole source provider company, to explore the possibility of entering into a one-year contract for automated license plate readers to be placed at 10 strategic locations throughout the city with the goal of identifying vehicles that have been involved in a crime, whether entering or exiting our city boundaries, with the intent of assisting our local law enforcement gather the evidence necessary to apprehend and prosecute suspects that are involved in a criminal activity. The cost of the cameras is $2,500 per camera, which will total $25,000 for the first year, with a one-time $2,500 installation cost, which will be the total for the $27,500 for this initial year. The contract includes access to the Flock cloud-based web portal, which will allow our officers to filter their vehicle searches by date, time, vehicle attributes, and/or partial plate number. What makes this system unique from other camera systems is the software's ability to provide the vehicle's fingerprint by providing not just the license plate number, but the vehicle color, make, model, and state of the license plate. The Flock cameras themselves have the ability to capture 900 plates per minute at a distance of up to 75 feet. This contract also includes the installation and maintenance of the cameras. In terms of privacy, which can be a concern with these systems, the city will own the footage taken by the system, and per the privacy policy that is being taken for your consideration tonight, stipulates that the purpose for using motion detection ALPR cameras and collecting photographic license plate images and/or ALPR data is to deter criminal activity and aid law enforcement in investigating and prosecution of possible crimes. The ALPR camera system is installed and maintained by the independent contractor Flock Systems. The footage is held on a secured cloud-based server that is fully encrypted and automatically deleted every 60 days. The footage is deleted every 60 days. The footage will only be accessed by sworn LASO officers. The independent contractors shall not access footage without explicit written permission from the city to help collect evidence in the event of a crime, and they shall not share, sell, or monetize any of the ALPR data. The ALPR data may only be shared with other law enforcement or prosecutorial agencies for official law enforcement purposes in accordance with this policy. The funds to be allocated for this contract will come from our annual COPS allocation, which is budgeted in our Fund 41. The city receives typically about $100,000 per year to go towards police training, equipment, or special police activities such as directed patrol and, in our instance, use of a school resource officer. Staff recommends the approval to enter into a contract with Flock Safety to install and maintain the automated license plate camera readers and approve the automated license plate camera uses and privacy policy. This concludes my report, and with us tonight is Captain Berg, who can assist with answering any questions you may have in terms of the use or benefits of utilizing the system for our law enforcement purposes.
Thank you. Captain Berg? Anybody have any questions for
I
your?
have a question. Where do you place this camera?
Good evening. The locations will be strategic based on where there's high traffic areas.
I mean, is it on a police car or is it on a...
It would be on a stationary pole, either on an existing pole or a new pole that's installed for that purpose.
And will it run 24 hours a day?
Yes. And that's a good point. I think one of the ways we look at this is it's a set of eyes out there, but a very accurate, strategic, high technology set of eyes. It's like having 10 sets of eyes at a high, at high traffic areas that could potentially catch either a stolen car or a car that's wanted for a serious crime coming into the city. So,
Good idea.
Andy, I had a question just on the. I'm thinking about under what circumstances would somebody be reviewing footage from a particular camera? Is it
so there's
just to see what's going on, or is there a specific form they have to fill out, or say that I'm looking for a particular thing, or what is that?
There's a couple of specific circumstances. The main one is these cameras are actively monitored in case there is a hit, meaning somebody at our dispatch is signed on to the system, and if a stolen car or something that's wanted for a serious crime passes by one of those cameras, within less than a minute, there's an alert that pops up. It gives them a picture of the car, the location, last direction, and then that allows us to go look for it. So that is constantly running. When it comes to research on a particular thing, it must be related to a specific crime. It's not just randomly looking for something. When a user logs in, they must put in the reason for the search, their identifying information, acknowledge that the system's not being used for an improper purpose, and so it can only be acknowledged. There can only be inquiries for legitimate law enforcement purposes, and there is a built-in tracking system that keeps a record of that data and those logins as required by law.
And how many cameras are we going to have, or is this
10?
We're going to have 10. Okay. So they could, depending on where you think they should be, there could be anywhere from 0 to 10 in use at any one time.
We are starting with the 10. There are some cities that have I know of one city that started with 39 and then they reduced it to 20. Mm-hmm. That's one of the flexible advantages of this system. It's not hardwired, so it's not as hard to move them if we find that a particular place is ineffective or the angle is wrong. And it is flexible that if we decide they're extremely successful but we missed a spot, we can add them. And the price is all inclusive of maintenance and software updates and all that stuff.
Are residential streets included in locations where the cameras might be located?
No, these are all the intended locations are on major thoroughfares.
Okay, great. So I think that's important. Thanks.
What about in any of our parks?
No, they're not. The nature of these cameras are intended to look for vehicles, so they're specific to high traffic streets.
I'll just add I know we're going to 10, and I don't know, and I don't know that we need to broadcast all the locations of the cameras, but I do have experience with this particular camera system. And I think it's most effective when they're deployed, in my experience, in managing some of the things that come from this, that when the deputies get a hit, so let's say it's at the entrance to the city, if we go from one entrance to the other and we don't have anything in between, it sometimes sends everybody on a cat and mouse chase. So, I understand for trying this out, but if there is an opportunity, like let's say Foothill, for example, is a thoroughfare arrow highway, for example. If we had, Amelia to San Dimas Avenue, San Dimas Canyon, something like that or whatever, but for the benefit of council, I'll tell you, I've not only been on the receiving side of this in terms of managing the operation, but I've also seen the end user experience and logged on to use this in my day job. And what's different about this system, it's highly effective. I'm going to tell you right now, it is highly effective. Deputies will be able to locate stolen vehicles, felony vehicles, other things like this very effectively. But what's unique about it is that in a lot of other ALPR systems, it sends that notification to the desk generally. This system, deputies may log on in their MDC in the car, and they might actually get like a live alert, and it'll ding, and all of a sudden the deputy's going to be like, oh, hey, and they might just happen to be wherever. And, deputies, there's something called the 10851 pin that the deputies can get for recovering stolen vehicles and stuff like that. I imagine we'll be
There's
giving
a lot
out
more now.
Quite a few of those. Yeah. I'm very excited. Thank you for bringing this to the city, and I think it's going to be effective. And I think it would be cool if we could see, I know in other communities that had this, if maybe after 90 days or so, we could get a report of the statistics behind it, because I think council would probably be pretty surprised at what probably will turn up from this.
Absolutely. I think that'll be very measurable, and I'm really quite certain it'll be successful.
Thank you.
Andy, we have a local city near us that we border, okay, who has a system of, similar to this or just like this, and it's was more expensive. Can you tell me what the difference is between the system they have and the system that we're getting? Because the dollars seem like there's a great variance.
This is a different company and a different technology, developed more recently, and even though some of the functions are similar, that other company is a huge nationwide company that has been doing it for several years, but for various reasons, the other company is much more expensive. The main difference is, and the reason this is a sole source, is that other company doesn't do what these do. It doesn't recognize cars. It's an expression they use of fingerprint technology. But for example, if a green Nissan Altima is used in a crime, but we don't happen to catch the license plate number, we can search our camera database for a green Nissan Altima and see if it was seen in the area of that crime at about the same time. So that's a main piece of the technology that makes this product different.
Super, and we can grow the system whatever way we want to. Yes. After we find out. I understand that we negotiated a 1-year contract, and this company normally requires a 2-year contract. So thank you guys for the staff and for you to working with the company, and so we'll have a chance to see how this works. All right, any additional questions for Captain Berg? We'll bring it back to the council. I think we have to do oral communications on this. Anyone in the community who wishes to call us concerning this particular item, feel free to call right now.
Thank you for calling. You're live.
Hi. I was calling in regards to the flock cameras that is being proposed to the City Council. And as a resident that's close to, I guess, an area that is under constant, deputy management in regards to stolen vehicle stuff in Old Town, I'm curious in regards to how high of a need our city actually needs this, considering the size of our city. Considering it's only 10 cameras, and as Mr. Viena was saying, unless you have several cameras on the same thoroughfare, it could be a little bit more difficult. But that being the case, we have several main thoroughways. So as a resident, I'm curious because, I mean, I know the mayor was saying that it's a smaller number than other cities, but it's a very considerable, large portion of the budget for the local law enforcement. So a question would be, you know, it's only for stolen vehicles, felony vehicles. Is it really going to be worth even the $30,000 or $27,000? You know, that I know we always want new technology, but if it's not going to be very useful, if it's not going to be getting that money back, then what's the purpose? And then also, I know it was said that this is being used for felony vehicles and for stolen vehicles, but is it also being used like a traffic camera, you know, to get like people running red lights or people, you know, with, I don't know, expired registrations or that kind of thing? I know other cities have done that. So is there kind of a better explanation of the actual parameters of what this is going to be used for? That would be great. Thank you so much.
Super. I'll ask Captain Berg to address the issue about red lights and registrations and things like that.
The simple answer is no. These cameras aren't intended for that and won't be used for that. I actually don't think they're really capable of that.
Okay, but as I understand it, it's not only going to be for stolen vehicles or things like that. It could be utilized for crime if a crime just occurred.
Absolutely, and if one example might be, let's say that a serious crime, a murder or a shooting happens in an adjacent city or anywhere, and then that car comes into this city. For the residents and for law enforcement, it's great to know that those people are coming in. So I have lots of examples of that where very serious crimes have been solved that way. We have had the benefit of that because those neighboring cities that have cameras. So that is, there's a lot of those side benefits. The issue of not enough cameras, I think that these will be strategically placed, and this is a great start. And I think it would certainly, if budget was not an issue, we understand that we would all like to have more personnel out there. This is in lieu of, it is far more economical than putting additional deputies on the street, and really having those eyes out there 24/7 really will be a big help.
Super. Michael, maybe you could take a moment and explain how this is being funded. It's not coming out of general fund, it's coming out of dedicated money.
Correct. The COPS fund is federal grant funds that we receive. It's an allocation about, like I said, $100,000 a year, and it's strictly for police purposes. So most of it could be used for training, special equipment. Like I said, we use a portion of it to fund our school resource officer. So it's kind of limited in the ability we can use for it anyway. And it's been kind of building up over the past few years as we've been able to find ways to use the money that are within the parameters. So this we've identified as a good source of use for these funds. It meets the requirements of the funds. So it seems like a great use for it. It'll help our officers achieve their goals and stopping these crimes, preventing crime. And so for that purposes, since it can't do it for anything else, we thought it can use other things, but not anything that would be general fund related is specific to this fund. And so it seemed like a good quality use for it.
For Captain Berg, a question. I understand following the murder a couple years back in Pioneer Park that the station took some proactive initiative, installed some cameras in Pioneer Park. Now, coupled with the addition of Flock, this would provide more, or I'm asking, I would imagine it would provide more investigatory tools in a situation like that where we have a murder and potentially provide more leads?
Absolutely. That's probably a value that doesn't occur every day, but it certainly is the kind of thing that has solved a lot of serious crimes, and that would be one of our primary purposes. Yes, it's great to catch the stolen car while it's rolling down the street, things like that, but as an investigative tool, it would be a big asset.
And do you know, and I guess not, I think you're involved with fire and safety for the Gold Line, I suspect. With that, the flock system, bringing a mass transit station to the community obviously brings with it other concerns, such as terrorism, for example. Can this system, I think there are alerts and things like this for vehicles that may be of interest and stuff like that that would assist in providing protection to the community against that. Is this system linked in such a way to be able to let law enforcement know if we had situations like that?
It is a database where wanted vehicles, or as you suggested, a terrorist or some other serious crime, where that can be manually entered in, and it would alert to that.
If someone was in the community.
It is not linked to any other big database, but it's easy to query this or the other major database.
So if there was a specific threat from like a fusion center or something like that and they entered it in, then it would alert if that was in our community or neighboring communities?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Super. Thank you. Okay. Any additional callers? 3? Okay.
Thank you for calling. You're live.
Good evening. It's Bob Olander calling. Mayor, City Council, and staff. I'm in extreme favor of your vote in awarding this contract for ALPRs. This provides an increased level of security for the citizens of San Dimas. Additionally, this system provides our great San Dimas Sheriff's Department with an additional tool in policing San Dimas. Cities like Walnut, south of us, have used the flock system and have found the ALPRs as a valuable tool for their sheriff's department. I thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Thank you for calling. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Hi. I just wanted to find out again who will have access to the films that are taken. Is it only law enforcement?
Yes, as we've written up in the privacy policy that is part of this contract for approval, it would only be LASO officers that will have access to this footage. The independent contractor cannot access the footage without written consent from the city, and we are not designating any city employee to have access to it, so it will be strictly the officers.
Well, ma'am?
Gee, hung up.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Thank you for calling. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Hi, I'm reaching out in regards to the ALPR contract for the flock system, and I had a couple of questions listening to what has already been presented. In the beginning, you stated that deputies can log into their cars and catch like a live alert, which would come across their car's desk. How would this work in relation to prior advising that it requires a specific reason to log into the camera system to see and search as related to like specific vehicle cases or theft or something along those lines? And then Sheriff Berg made a comment or used an example of a green Altima. What is the margin for error when you're looking at, let's say it doesn't provide you with an actual license plate? What are the numbers as related to that? Because, you know, if you have a white Toyota Camry, we know that Toyota Camry, Toyota Corolla are highly cars which are everywhere. And then in regards to the terrorism comments, how would that be something that would necessarily relate in regards to personal safety as well, or personal tracking and cameras? I know that they're made specifically for cars, but when you bring up the cameras which were installed in Pioneer Park, does that not violate any kind of personal privacy concerns? And then the last question is, what kind of empirical evidence, or is there any evidence that's going to be provided to the community that's going to show, hey, you know, these types of cameras help to catch criminals at XYZ rate versus we're installing them in the attempts to deter additional crimes and such from happening? Thank you.
Thank you. Captain Berger, you'd like to address that?
As far as the vehicle description and the ability to identify a particular make or model, it's strictly an investigative tool. So it's as if an officer saw a car of the same color, make and model. It's something that points us in the direction of a car, and then you know, having such a car in the vicinity of something requires some additional investigative steps to, you know, before any action's taken on that car. So that's just it. It's an investigative tool. I think in regards to the terrorism question, that's simply any law enforcement agency would be able to enter a wanted vehicle into an NCIC database. It's the same database that an officer would have access to simply if he ran a license plate manually. And it's the same database that another camera technology might capture. So it's the same database. It would contain the same information.
So the other part of that, I think, was the in the car experience piece, and
that's important. So what I say is only an authorized user can log into the system to monitor, and that is strictly to get hits that are already confirmed that have been logged in. So an authorized user can log in to monitor those cameras, and the sole purpose of that is if a car drives past one of these cameras, it generates generates a hit or generates a message that says this car is at this location right now. That's the I guess that's the time where we would log in where you don't have a specific purpose. The query of the database is what requires someone to log in and say the specific person for searching. So the query function is what requires a specific purpose to investigate a specific crime.
Captain, can you describe for the community, I guess, when a deputy goes in to the field today and they don't have ALPR equipped vehicles and they don't have the Flux system loaded in their browser, how does a deputy find a stolen car? They play license plate bingo, I guess, or how do they do that?
That is an expression, but essentially they would have to either on the radio or by typing onto the laptop into their car, they would have to manually enter those license plates. And I would just point out that requires them, to stop and safely do that. With these cameras, it's something that's there, and it's simply running those as they drive by. It doesn't require a deputy to be there.
All right, and I would add for the community, to build on what Captain Berg said, is that when you log in on the computer itself and you just leave the browser open for the Flux system, it'll chime. So you don't have cameras on your vehicle, obviously, because as the captain outlined, they're going to be at fixed post intersections. But what might happen is you might hear bring, And then you can look, and it alerts you that a car matching the description, sometimes will bring up a photo of the vehicle, and if there's any unique identifiers, as was shown, and you actually see a picture of the car and the license plate that you're looking for. So it's really a difference from the license plate bingo expression, where you kind of look and you're trying to find it and wonder, is that the right one, or is that the right one? In this case, you can actually see the exact car. Is that right?
Yes.
And I think the last part of the caller's question was about a report or just telling the effectiveness or that kind of thing.
And I think that's what we referenced during the original presentation is just, yes, absolutely, maybe after whatever period you designate, after 90 days or every 90 days or 6 months or whatever period of time you like, we can give a report on that.
All right.
I think the community, if you're interested, you might contact Temple Sheriff Station and some of these other sheriff stations that have used this system, and I think have seen significant success in terms of the effectiveness of the tool, so much so that they did, in fact, invest in it as well. So,
and just one, I think, important clarification for the public. When you're logged in and monitoring this, if a patrol deputy were logged in into the system and monitoring it, it's not like they're monitoring a fixed camera and they're watching every car drive by. It's only sending actual felony vehicles or stolen vehicles to them. So it's not like they're watching, mom coming home from the soccer game or something like that. It's just not the way the system's designed.
well, and you make a good point that most of the deputies, in my experience, log onto this thing, leave it in the background, and then they're driving, actually patrolling, doing the Lord's work, if you will, and their attention's drawn to it when there's a message, right, Cap?
Yes.
With that, Mayor, I would make a motion to approve and adopt.
We're still in the public comment.
Oh, we are. Oh, my bad.
Okay.
Withdrawn.
One more.
Thank you for calling. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. This is Gil Gonzalez. I don't know if I can ask a question and direct it to one particular councilman to respond.
We'll have to refer that to the city attorney.
You have your 3 minutes, Mr. Gonzalez, and you can say whatever you like. If the council member wishes to respond, then he might.
Okay. I was going to ask John Ebner. I said, John, you're pretty technical about things. You're very straightforward. Who's the guy that brought this up to the city? Was it Ryan or who? Because Ryan seems to be doing a lot of talking about this, and I know he works for the sheriff's department, and I don't like the idea of sort of being political, which is part of his office duties, I would assume. Because the next thing I'm going to see is something on his flyer for next year. I brought this in and I brought that in, and I don't really like it. I'm in favor of it. I'm not against it, but I want to know who initiated this thing.
Well, so Gil, I think Captain Berg actually brought it to us.
Oh, you don't know for sure, but you think it's Captain Berg?
He's waving his hand saying yes, and Ryan has experience with it, so that's why Ryan was enlightening us with
Okay, just a general question, and I appreciate that. Again, I dig the sheriff big time. I love the sheriff, and it's just I like him a lot better than a small town person, and I'm in favor of this if we have money for it. Apparently, somebody knew that the money could be used for this. But I don't know if you noticed that Metrolink is running some fiber optic nerves, and they've started like in Glendora, and just the last week or so, they were working through town, and it goes all the way to Pomona. These are fiber optic communication cables, and apparently they have cameras in the actual Metrolink vehicles. And my question is, who is the jurisdiction that supervises the safety of the Metrolink?
Captain, you want to address that, or do you it probably?
I don't care who says it.
So Metrolink is an agency right now for policing on board the Metrolink trains. That is the Sheriff's Department.
And then if we get this system, would you be able to tap in to the Metrolink and observe people that are coming in the train or whatever to San Dimas?
No, that's done by Metro themselves, and it's only accessible via the Rail Operations Center, and law enforcement does not have direct access to that.
When I say law enforcement, you mean the Sheriff's Department?
No, we do not have ability to monitor anything on the trains. That's strictly Metro.
Even though Metro is part of the Sheriff's Department?
They're not part of the Sheriff's Department, but if we make a request for a video related to a crime and show that it's related to a crime, they will look up that video and at some point be able to send it to us.
So we can control or at least observe vehicles, but we can't observe or control who comes in and out of the train.
Yeah, the two are not related, and this system is not part of Metro or accessible to Metro either.
It's just to the Sheriff's Department.
Yes.
But you do know they have fiber optics on the trains, correct?
I did not know that.
Yeah, they definitely have a big system. I mean, if I was going to do some terrorist thing, I'd lift a can up off the sidewalk and cut those lines, like we see in the movies, you know. I just wondered if this system was going to be available to our local jurisdiction, the Sheriff's Department, and I think you answered that. And be safe, Captain Berg. You look real good, and thank you, Council, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Ebner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Next. All right, seeing there's no more calls, we'll move on.
Well, a motion was made to approve. I seconded.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I'd just like to make that motion in the honor of Gil Gonzalez.
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing no nays, that's, we're going to have ALPRs come into San Dimas very shortly. Thank you. Captain, thank you very much for your suggestion of bringing it to town, and I think it's going to be a good tool for our local Sheriff's Department and, you know, capture some bad guys. Thank you. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about is item B is Senate Bill 1383, Organic Waste Methane Emissions Reduction Impact.
A mouthful.
Yes. You want to introduce?
Yep. Mayor, City Council, our administrative analyst, Lauren Marshall, is going to present this item.
Good
Good evening, Lauren.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Again, my name is Lauren. I am bringing an item before you this evening to bring your attention to upcoming impacts to the city from Senate Bill 1383. Following the presentation, staff recommends the City Council direct staff to work in partnership with Waste Management to develop the implementation of this legislation by the compliance date of January 1st, 2022. SB 1383 is the most significant waste reduction mandate to be adopted in California for the last 30 years. SB 1383 requires the state to reduce organic waste, food waste, green waste, paper products, etc., disposal by 75% in the next 5 years. In other words, the state must reduce organic waste disposal by more than 20 million tons by 2025. The law also requires the state to increase edible food recovery by 20% by 2025. This has significant policy and legal implications for state and local governments. As such, City have invited CalRecycle's Kara Morgan, the branch chief, leading the local assistance and market development team, to present this information to the City Council this evening. San Dimas's local CalRecycle representatives, Jeff Taylor and Melissa Gomez, are also on the call. Also available for questions following the presentation is the city's waste management representative, Terry Muse, to answer any questions the council has regarding the implementation of SB 1383. Kara and her team are responsible for providing technical assistance and overseeing compliance for over 540 jurisdictions and 200 state agencies in California. Kara serves on the team that developed the SB 1383 regulations and is now leading teams on developing implementation tools and training for jurisdictions and stakeholders. Kara has over 30 years of experience successfully implementing and managing recycling, integrated waste management, and related environmental programs for California. So in short, there's no one more knowledgeable than Kara and her team with regards to implementing this legislation. So we'd like to thank Kara at the staff level for making herself available from Sacramento this evening on this call, and Jeff and Melissa and Terry as well. So with that, I will hand it over to Kara.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Are we on the first slide?
Yes, I believe so. Actually, yeah.
There we go. Thanks so much. Council members, I'd just like to thank you so much for inviting us to be here tonight. It's such a pleasure to be with you. Feel free to ask questions as we go along, or we can save questions till the end. Next slide. Just to give you some context on why we are here, organic waste is the largest waste stream in California. And right now, 1 in 5 Californians are food insecure when we are throwing away edible food. Next slide. Senate Bill 1383 passed in 2016 as part of California's larger strategy to combat climate change. This law was designed to reduce the global warming superpollutants like methane, which are up to 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Landfills are the 3rd largest producer of methane in California. To reduce methane now, we have to move away from landfilling organic waste, like food, paper, and yard waste. When organic waste breaks down in the landfill, methane is generated and released into the air. In California, landfills are the 3rd largest producer of methane, as I noted. So recycling organic waste and recovering edible food is a fast track to combating climate change. Next slide. SB 1383 sets statewide targets. It requires Californians to reduce organic waste disposal by 50% by 2020 and 75% by 2025. It requires us to increase edible food recovery for human consumption by 20% by 2025. This will help the 1 in 5 Californians who don't have enough to eat. Organic waste is defined broadly in these regulations and includes food waste, paper, cardboard, green waste, organic textiles and carpets, lumber, wood, biosolids, digestate, manure, and sludges. CalRecycle has been collaborating with jurisdictions like the City of San Dimas staff and other stakeholders over the past 3.5 years to complete the regulations that will soon be final. While the regulations take effect January 1, 2022, jurisdictions have to plan now so they can be in compliance by this date. Next slide. There are many benefits if we successfully implement California's super pollutant reduction strategy. Some of these benefits include environmental benefits such as fighting climate change, improving air quality, and landfilling less waste. We also can provide millions of meals to Californians who don't have enough to eat by rescuing edible food. And we can create thousands of new green jobs by building the infrastructure that we'll have in California. Next slide. I just wanted to provide a brief update on where we're at with the regulatory process. And also, I'd like to thank Lauren for engaging with us. Currently, the regulations are with the Office of Administrative Law. We submitted the regulations, the final package, on October 9th. The Office of Administrative Law is expected to make their final approval within 30 days. We'll be notifying all jurisdictions as soon as we hear back from the Office of Administrative Law. Next slide, please. Just very briefly, I wanted to give you an overview of what the jurisdiction's requirements are under these regulations to adequately staff and resource the programs. You can see on this slide, I will briefly cover some of these responsibilities. Jurisdictions will be required to provide organic waste collection services to all residents and businesses. They will be required to provide service, what we call automatically providing service or universal service, in which each resident and business is automatically provided the service rather than having to voluntarily subscribe to it. The regulations standardize container colors across the state. This is to be fully implemented by January 1st, 2036. And it requires a jurisdiction to place a label on each new container or lid. So the regulations build in flexibility for monitoring, for phasing in the colors of containers. There are also contamination monitoring requirements for the contents of the containers, and typically jurisdictions will utilize their hauler to do this task. Jurisdictions can issue 3 types of waivers to jurisdictions. These include de minimis, meaning there are small amounts of organic waste, physical space, and collection frequency waivers. The department can also issue waivers to jurisdictions. Jurisdictions are also responsible to implement edible food recovery programs. This includes determining capacity that's available for edible food recovery, establishing an edible food program that can meet the need of Tier 1 and Tier 2 commercial edible food generators. Those are larger businesses that have edible food like supermarkets and certain types of restaurants. Jurisdictions will be responsible for inspecting these generators to ensure that they have edible food recovery agreements. Many communities will utilize their environmental health inspectors, so who are already out at restaurants and food establishments, to do these inspections. And jurisdictions will be required to provide education and outreach. The city will need to decide how they want to staff these various programs. Additionally, jurisdictions will need to conduct education and outreach to all of their generators, and this can take many shapes and forms. It can be done electronically via the website, print material, direct contact, a variety of methods. It's important that the educational materials are linguistically accessible. There are also some procurement requirements. Procurement requirements include procuring certain types of organic waste products, such as compost, renewable gas that's used for transportation fuels, electricity, or electricity from biomass conversion. There are also requirements for recycled content paper. And then to wrap up, jurisdictions, cities, and counties will participate together in really looking at how much capacity is available, both for organic waste and edible food recovery. Jurisdictions also will need to have an enforcement program. However, as I mentioned earlier, if jurisdictions are automatically providing service to customers, the level of enforcement that will be needed should be very minimal. Also, there's a big focus on education. So again, we expect there not to be a huge need for enforcement. The jurisdiction will be required, your city will be required to adopt an ordinance, and I'll talk more about the model tools that CalRecycle has developed to make it easy for the city to do that. Next slide. Just briefly, I just wanted to hit on the different departments that will need to be involved in planning and implementation of this regulation. This slide gives you a high-level overview of the various departments that will have a role to play in implementation. Your city should start thinking about and planning for the staffing you will need, who will do which task, and which tasks will be done by your hauler, for example. Next slide, please. Just briefly, I wanted to show you who is considered a Tier 1 and Tier 2 commercial edible food generator. This slide shows you for Tier 1, these generators or types of businesses will be required to start recovering all of their available edible food starting January 1, 2022. And the Tier 2 group is required to start recovering their edible food by January 1, 2024. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, jurisdictions are required to monitor compliance and conduct enforcement. By January 1, 2022, jurisdictions are required to have an ordinance in place. From the time period of January 2022 to December 2023, jurisdictions need to identify businesses that are not in compliance and provide educational materials to those generators. So the focus of the first 2 years is on educating generators, hopefully to bring them into compliance. After January 2024, jurisdictions will need to take progressive enforcement action if there is a non-compliant generator. The progressive approach allows for notification to the generator and provides time for the generator to comply before penalties are required to be issued by the jurisdiction. The regulations set a maximum time frame that a jurisdiction has to issue a notice of violation and issue penalties to a generator. The jurisdiction has the flexibility to develop its own enforcement process within these parameters. As I mentioned, though, an early and robust education program will minimize the amount of enforcement action needed. And also, as I mentioned previously, if the city is automatically providing service to its residents and commercial businesses, then there should not be a need to have any enforcement for recycling. Next slide. I just wanted to talk briefly about CalRecycle's oversight. CalRecycle will be evaluating each jurisdiction's compliance with the regulations. The structure of the regulations does not establish a numeric target for each jurisdiction, but instead it sets programmatic requirements. So in this case, for example, as I mentioned, jurisdictions need to provide all of the residents and businesses with organic services. So for example, in San Dimas, this would be having the recycling cart for recyclables for fibers, papers, cardboard, and other types of recyclables like cans and bottles. And conversely, green waste and food waste cart and a trash cart. The regulations, while they are very prescriptive, they do allow for some flexibility. And as I mentioned earlier, phasing in of containers and things of that nature. Also, as you're looking at this slide, I wanted to emphasize that CalRecycle's approach is compliance assistance first. We want jurisdictions to be successful with implementing these requirements. So our goal is to provide the city with as much technical assistance as we can to ensure that you have a smooth transition as you begin implementation of these requirements. If CalRecycle has a situation where a jurisdiction, after receiving assistance first, is still not compliant, CalRecycle has the discretion to begin an enforcement process. This enforcement process starts out with a compliance evaluation. The jurisdiction is informed of the gap and given time to correct the gap. If the gap is still not corrected, the enforcement process is an escalating process, and the timelines are not triggered until the CalRecycle issues a notice of violation. With a notice of violation, a jurisdiction has up to approximately 6 months to correct the gap. Only then, if the issue still remains, then CalRecycle can consider moving forward in the enforcement process and moving into issuing penalties. The regulations allow for a process to give a jurisdiction additional time if it's needed, and that is under what's called a corrective action plan. Next slide, please. Just briefly, I just wanted to share with you, CalRecycle recently released a number of tools for jurisdictions. And this week, actually, we're doing training, statewide webinars on these tools. We developed a model franchise agreement, a model mandatory organics disposal reduction ordinance, a model organic waste product procurement policy, and a model edible food recovery agreement. The model franchise agreement and model ordinance are specifically designed to be easily customizable by jurisdictions, so that it's very easy to put in your information and take out anything that's not specific to your city. The procurement policy is available as a tool if your city needs it. And the Model Edible Food Recovery Agreement is a tool that's been designed to be provided to edible food recovery organizations to provide to businesses that they are servicing. There are a number of other tools that we have released that are on our website, and we can follow up with Lauren to give her anything that she might need. And also, as we move forward, if there are any other tools that the city would find helpful, we'd love to hear about them, and we'd be happy to develop anything else that you might need. The final slide, Lauren. So just in conclusion, just to let you know, until the regulations are approved, the information in this presentation is still preliminary. And at this time, I'd like to open it up to questions and just thank all of you for allowing us to be here tonight.
Thank you. Any questions?
Well, I have a couple questions. Food waste from schools. Is the city going to be responsible for that, or is it totally the schools?
Yeah, that is going to be the school's responsibility, and Cal Recycle will have oversight over the schools. The one thing that the city will need to do is to provide education outreach to the schools. So that will be your only responsibility as it relates to the schools.
Okay, and another question is, will any green waste be allowed to use for a cover for landfills?
That's a great question. No, a different piece of legislation was passed a couple of years ago, which established that green waste used as alternative daily cover at landfills is considered disposal, and that took effect this year. So the regulations fall in line with that legislation, and it is considered disposal. It's not banned, but it is not considered recycling. Because again, the green waste in that landfill, the whole point of this regulation and the previous law is to prevent waste from decomposing in the landfill and reducing methane. So we're looking to move green waste, for example, out of the landfill, even if it's used as cover.
What are they going to use for cover?
What are they going to use for cover, Kara?
Thank you. There are many other types of alternative types of cover, construction and demolition, intermediate types of cover. I don't know specifically for the landfill that where San Dimas's materials go, but that's something I could definitely follow up on.
Okay, thank you very much.
I had a quick question on the how we're doing. So you mentioned that by January 1st, 2020, already passed, of course, we were supposed to be at a 50% reduction of organic waste. How are we doing on that?
Mm-hmm. We're not doing so well. We are significantly below the 50% target.
And I'm just curious. So I put out two big green waste recycling containers this week for the people to pick up. And people do that, and there's lots of yard waste. So I'm trying to think how this is actually going to work.
Yeah. Well, I think for many communities, and probably like City of San Dimas, I think the other types of organics that we're currently disposing of, like food waste is still a significant part of our waste stream. And so I think by combining food waste with the green waste and processing it together, I think that's what a lot of communities are going to move towards.
So when you say processing, so what does that mean? So and I understand, a supermarket might have some food that they would throw out because it's just getting, past expiration or whatever, but it's still edible, and maybe that's what's trying to be captured here. And I'm guessing you're going to put it, did you say something about special containers that they would then somehow give it somewhere and somebody would use it? But some things are just too old, and they are, they're not really edible, and yet they're organic. And then there's all the green waste. So I'm just trying to think, there's all this waste right now. You mentioned processing. Is that how it's going to actually be taken care of? Because people are going to still have to throw that stuff out. Unless they're just going to throw everything down the garbage disposal. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, so for example, if material was put down the garbage disposal, in some communities, that material will go to what's a wastewater treatment plant. That wastewater treatment plant has in-vessel digestion systems that produce gas from the breaking down the organic materials. So you're going to have some systems what are called in-vessel digestion systems. You're going to have other systems that are composting facilities where they might use windrows where the material is composted. So I don't know if that helps answer your question. Plus edible food recovery, getting that food that is edible to food recovery organizations so it can feed people that are hungry.
All right, thanks.
Kara, thank you for your presentation first. I'm too, like my colleague over there, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. It's very water world, and I'm just trying to think of how that's going to happen. And it's giving me indigestion, actually.
That's
but
good.
Nevertheless, my only suggestion to you, I know I recall when this came to council some time ago, and we had some discussion about this, and both for the city and I think Terry, I do hope we roll out technical assistance to multifamily dwellings, mixed use communities. I think that, the one thing that, I'm involved with my HOA, surprisingly, on top of all of this, and it's very complicated when you have mixed use communities, for example, when you look at both. There's a difference in terms of rate for the collection of organic waste and the separation, the compliance aspect of that. And so I just hope that whatever technical assistance you guys have is really thinking in mind for the end user. I mean, it's great to get government on board, but realistically, the education piece that you're talking about for places like our downtown where we have, photographers who are mixed in with restaurants, I mean, that could create a substantial cost expense for a business association that was otherwise unanticipated or even unequitable. And so I do hope that's on your radar because this is a challenge that I think many of our community segments are going to have a challenge meeting, really understanding, as Terry's talked about in the past, about like the recyclables, making sure they're all emptied, and then you have this new challenge of organic waste that all needs to be parsed out, right? And it creates, I think the other piece of this is for the city is to think about the logistical challenge that comes from this as it relates to the waste enclosures at all of these different sites, because I think that's a whole nother aspect of this that isn't captured. This has to be separated, right? So this is an additional bin in addition to the existing bin, or is it all together?
No, what we're proposing, Waste Management and I have been in contact, and staff have been in contact. What we're doing is taking the green waste bin, and people will put organic waste in with the green waste.
Okay.
It will go into the existing green bin.
That assumes, though, places have a green bin, and I can think of many places that don't have green bins.
And that kind of goes back to what Kara was saying, is making sure that we as a city and hauler are providing those materials to whoever needs to do it, which is everyone.
Right, and that's going back to what I'm saying, that there are several places right now that have no enclosures or no space for additional bins, and that's what I think is going to be a challenge in implementation as we get down to this. I mean, even like Pizzetto's, that whole space, I mean, they're probably either going to have additional pickups, or they're going, I mean, that's really the only way to do this, is put 2 bins and then add more pickups. Right.
You really kind of quantified it right now, that this is why we're bringing this to you now, almost a year ahead of time, to make sure that we have time to do that implementation.
Yeah, I hate this topic, but I get it. Thank you for bringing it up.
One quick question as well. Reducing consumption is fantastic. I think it is kind of a lofty goal, as some of the other council members have said as well. One question that I have, though, is reducing the methane coming from landfills. Does the state have any program for landfill methane capture systems?
Yeah, many of our landfills are designed to capture methane. However, it's a big hill, basically, right? There's a lot of porosity with a landfill. You don't pour impervious layer over the top. So methane is still escaping, and in a significant amount. NASA recently did some imaging from space, and that is how we actually were able to determine that methane from landfills is the 3rd largest producer of the various activities that are producing methane. And so it's very significant in California. And I think, what we are dealing with respect to climate change is the need to implement various programs to reduce methane. Methane is short-lived. So it is something that if we can reduce methane, we can have a very immediate impact on some of the effects that we are seeing with climate change. And that's really what was behind passing this legislation.
So with methane capture systems, I guess my question would be, if this is something that you even know, I'm not sure how
Sure.
versed you are in it, is like, are we talking the state has previously rolled out some sort of landfill methane capture system, and landfills are required to have a system like this in place already, or is this something that's being done in conjunction with a program like this?
Yeah, landfills for a number of years have already had to have methane capture systems. And so they have those in place. As those landfill cells are built, the methane capture systems are built into that cell.
Okay.
But again, it's not capturing all the methane, and there's still a significant amount of methane that is emitted into the air, to the atmosphere.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions for Kara? I just wondered how come you're basically telling us we're 10 months behind, the way I understood it, and what agency is supposed to be responsible for keeping us up to date? Oh, the state. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You have one call? Kara, don't go nowhere. You may have to answer this call.
All right, you've got it.
You hung up. All right. Any additional call or questions for Lauren? Oh, here she's back. Amanda? She there? Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, Lauren, thank you very much. You just want us to receive and file this, right?
And enter into a partnership with Waste Management to implement this program.
Okay. Anybody want to make a recommendation?
I'll make the motion. So I move that we accept staff's recommendation, which involves entering into a partnership with Waste Management to implement SB 1383 measures and to ensure compliance with state mandates before penalties can be assessed by state for noncompliance on San Dimas.
Anybody want to second it?
Got a motion, second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
It's a high bar. We're not just 10 months behind. 10 months ago, we were way behind the 50% goal. To think that we're going to get to 75% of, reduction in organic waste by 2025 is hard to imagine, actually.
Lofty goal.
And they're requiring the city to enforce this on Albertsons, restaurants, whatever, all these things, and accepting the school districts, as Dennis mentioned. But it's one of those things you have to do somehow. So having a partnership with Waste Management is a good idea.
Well, they've proven to be a good partner in the past, so I think that together and with our staff and with the help of the state and figuring out what to do with this, I think half the battle is understanding it. I don't know that too many of us up here truly understand it, so we're depending on you, Lauren, to keep us informed.
You got it.
I just want to make sure I understand. I mean, literally at the grocery stores today, you've got genetically engineered whatever. And then, is Whole Foods going to have half foods now? These reclaimed, I say that jokingly, but I'm quasi-serious that reclaimed food, the idea is, right, to redistribute the reclaimed food to people who are in need. And in a COVID-19 / everything other pathogen world, I'm just very curious on how that transaction occurs. I mean, I understand composting, I understand all that stuff, but to take, the corn thing, this kid munching down on this corn in this presentation, throw it out from Pinnacle Peak and then think that it's going to be redistributed half-eaten, I don't know. I mean, how does that work? I mean, it's very water world. That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, how that corn is never going to be made whole, right?
Well, it's very interesting. Some articles that I've looked over in relationship to food recovery, they're making cosmetics out of it. They're making building material out of it.
Okay, but so, I mean, we're not necessarily saying that food's going to be recovered for consumption again.
Correct. It could be anything from composting to making it into something else.
Okay, all right. So it's not like a half-eaten sandwich and then John gets it 2 weeks later.
Right.
Like maybe in a I don't know.
Yeah, it's only edible food that meets health and safety guidelines. It's the kind of food that we're talking about that will be recovered.
What kind of food is that?
Well, from a supermarket, there are a number of bakery items, loaves of bread. There's some perishable items that, when kept under certain temperature thresholds, can also be recovered. So this is a new space, and you're right, it is water world. I totally am with you, but it is a growing industry. And the space is really growing, and the technology, moving food, edible food from generator to food recovery to person who needs it. There's just a lot going on that's being developed to be more efficient in moving food instead of wasting it.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. John, do we have a call?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I think so.
Thank you for
Am I
calling. Go
live
ahead.
yet?
I think you're live.
Okay. We were having some technical difficulty transferring calls in. So I have a question in regards to the enforcement of this, not necessarily from the businesses or even from like the customers, like residents and so on, but more from the actual either the recycling or the trash company. So I know right now for Dimas Waste Management, if I'm not wrong, for the whole city, is the trash company that also is the one dealing with the green waste bins and so on. And obviously there's rules on the bin that says what kind of green waste you're allowed, what kind of recycle is allowed in the recycle bin. But how are we going to enforce waste management properly using the food waste? Because I believe it was Waste Management that actually got a very heavy fine because they were taking the recycled items and just dumping it in the trash in the landfill instead of actually recycling it. So I know I personally do not put my recycles except for maybe some large cardboard for Waste Management because of that. I don't think there's very much faith in a company that's just going to put it into the landfill anyway. So who is going to be monitoring that on the actual trash companies that are supposed to be monitoring this, or is it going to be through a whole nother company? Is it not going to be Waste Management, and now that's going to be picked up by another company if it's going to a whole separate facility or whatnot? It's just where is going to be the accountability for those companies themselves, not necessarily for businesses or for residents. That obviously has its own things. But for the actual trash companies, how are we going to ensure they're really going to be using this, for the good that we're trying to propose, so that as a resident putting in that extra effort, or as a business putting in the extra effort and maybe extra funds in order to help our, our state and help our nation, help our world become better, is there going to be some kind of accountability that we can rely on from that company?
So, Amanda, Waste Management does conduct audits on occasion per the CalRecycle regulations as it exists now with trash contamination and recycling contamination. So this will be another layer that's added once this program is implemented.
Yeah, and just to add to Lauren's point, it's a great question. Cal Recycle will also be responsible for monitoring haulers. Last year, there was a new requirement on haulers to report into it's an electronic reporting system. So we will be tracking where the material is flowing to ensure that it is going to the proper processing facility. So you can rest assured that we will be monitoring that.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you so much. Okay. Have a good night.
Thank you. One more?
Thank you for calling. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Hi, I have one point and a couple of questions. First of all, I just wanted to say that Trader Joe's already does provide food from their stores every day that goes to people who are in need. And I also wanted to ask about this automatically provide part of this. And does that mean that every resident will be required to have a greens bin at an additional cost to what they already have? Because I know some people don't have them. And then the other thing I wanted to know is what's being done with the green waste now? I mean, is it being made into compost? Is it available for people? And if organic materials such as animal products are being put into green bins, you're not going to be able to use that for composting to be used in a garden. So I'll take my answers off the air. Thank you.
Terry, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yes. So currently the green waste from San Dimas is being taken to a number of different locations for diversion. It's being taken to facilities that they call chip and grind and prepare it for land application to use on crops. And also it is being taken to some composting facilities. It's being used a variety of ways, but all of those are ways that are reusing the green waste. It's not going to the landfill.
And then what about the customers that don't currently have a green waste bin?
So the customers that don't currently have a green waste bin will have to have a green waste bin under SB 1383. They will have to, they don't have green waste, that is where they will put their food waste. So what we're looking at doing is trying to make it easier for people that they would combine their green waste and food waste together. If they don't have green waste, then they'll just be putting food waste into that bin.
And she was asking about the cost of that because the green waste, I forget, Terry, is that just a service or is that charged to the resident?
Green waste is part of the overall rate. So it's currently being, it's blended into the overall rate. And yes, there will be an increased cost, of course, because this is a whole new type of processing. It's going to mean taking the green waste, food waste to a composting facility, which there are not very many of them around, and a lot of them are pretty far away. We have a facility that will be able to process food waste and green waste as compost. It's in Tulare. So obviously that is far from San Dimas, but there just are not, a large number of outlets right now currently, which is one of the things that needs to be addressed as this, regulation becomes effective. And maybe Kara might be able to answer a little more about in terms of facilities that are currently available and how many will need to be on board when this comes into effect.
Yeah, that's great points, Terry. We do expect the infrastructure to continue to expand, more facilities to come online as the program matures. And I think to the point about animal products, in the composting process, it is heated to a certain temperature. So things like meat scraps and other materials are processed at a high temperature so that compost can be used back to make our soils healthy, to use them in the garden. So there's not an issue. And those facilities are closely monitored to ensure health and safety.
Super. Any additional? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We'll move on to item C, relocation of historical railroad cantilever to Rhodes Park. Staff?
Yes, Mayor, City Council members, I'll be presenting this item as soon as PowerPoint gets put up. All right. In July, staff was approached by Paul Lashura, who is also on the call later on to answer any questions. He's a railroad history enthusiast, an independent consultant engineer, in a request to relocate the historical Santa Fe cantilever signal to the San Dimas Railroad Museum. The historical cantilever is approximately 105 years old and was part of the Atchison and Topeka and Santa Fe Railway. The signal is currently located at Pasadena Avenue Railroad crossing in Glendora, and it's protected the east end of the former Glendora siding, a track used to enable trains to pass each other on a single track main line. When this signal was fabricated, the typical rolled structural steel shapes of today were not available. The signal is constructed with steel bars, plates, angles, and structural sections created through the use of lacing, short sections of steel bars, stitching, and angles and channels together with rivets to form the mast and other parts of the cantilever bridge. Can you do it? Oops. Next slide. Sorry about this. Next slide. An interdepartment team met to discuss the merits of the project and each department's contribution if council had a desire to move forward with the relocation of this cantilever. The proposed location is west of the San Dimas Railroad Museum over the historical track currently placed in the same location. The Foothill Gold Line Construction Authority facilitates the donation of existing railroad equipment when possible to historical societies and organizations during the salvage operations. KPJV, a contractor for Gold Line, is offering the cantilever signal to the city through its subcontractor, Mass Electric. Next slide. If the request to explore relocating is approved by council, the project team will provide council with additional analysis consisting of fiscal impact and the extent of city and private party partner or project coordination. Will engage all parties active in the construction of the Gold Line and community stakeholders in collaboration and efforts to relocate the cantilever signal. Next slide. This is a conceptual overlay photo of the historical cantilever at the site looking to the southwest. This is a conceptual overlay looking to the northeast. And this is a conceptual overlay at ground level. The cantilever bar is 20 feet or 28 feet from the ground, and the top of the signal is 35 feet above the ground. The restoration design would include electric wiring of the signal and controls with a looping circuit that would display green, yellow, red, off, pause, and then back to green aspects as a display while it was there. Next slide. If the council wishes to move forward with exploration of this project, the cantilever signal is available for removal, restoration, and installation. The restoration process is estimated at 4 months The plan would then be submitted and received to the city. Development approval of a no-fee construction services contract would be initiated, and construction and installation of the cantilever signal would begin. The total project duration is estimated at 8 to 10 months. If council approves moving forward, the project team will explore a variety of public-private partnerships, including local and national railroad historical societies. It is anticipated that volunteer labor and materials and donations would pay for the cost of this project. The cost estimate for the salvaging, restoration, and installation of the signal is approximately $50,000. With that, staff recommends that the City Council approve continuing exploration of the salvage, restoration, and reconstruction and installation of the historical cantilever signal at Rhodes Park. And if approved, staff will provide council with additional analysis consistent of any unforeseen fiscal impacts, risk assignment, and project coordination between the city and the private party entities. With that, I'm available, and also Mr. Lashura is online to answer any questions you might have about this.
Okay, questions?
Brad, I had a question. Can you go back to the presentation really quick? The picture of the thing in front of the depot.
Probably the at-grade one.
Yeah. Keep going. Next one. That one. So, I like the idea. I'm supportive. I'm just wondering when the egress of the Gold Line, the Great Wall of San Dimas, is there, if we could find a local artist maybe to paint a train. So the actual, I'm not joking, I'm serious, like an actual artist perhaps to come and be able to put something that complements this, because I think it really will be, the background of this is going to likely be the wall of the Gold Line coming down. And so it would be pretty cool to have something that, if you're looking at it directly with the train station right there and those tracks and this thing, that might be pretty nifty. I don't know. Those are my thoughts.
Are you painting? You're talking about painting the bridge?
No, yeah, like
painting on the bridge, so it's like a backdrop.
Right.
And I haven't thought about that, but that's actually a great idea. I mean, if you go and see a lot of old movies or things that were done on sound stages a lot,
right,
they did great painting in the back, and it would be the same kind of thing, whether it's a train coming head on or it's a curve you see coming your way or whatever. It could even be the depot on one, a picture of the depot with the train.
Yeah, like a tunnel.
Fires
like
the imagination.
going through.
That's great.
Yeah. Every once in a while, I get one.
I don't know.
That's two tonight.
I'm trying to visualize, how far that's going back. But you also, and it's in the wrong place. But you also have that huge wall on the Johnstone building, that we've talked about for years, putting some type of mural on there, packing house type stuff or something like that. Something in the, I realize it's not right behind it, but it would be, there might be something useful to that. I find it hard that anything can be done, but I just find it, when I'm looking at the renderings of the bridge, I'm just not sure how they would paint it on that bridge.
Good question.
I have no idea.
Anything's
But I am supportive of us, accepting it. I really want to know more about how we're going to pay, how it's going to be paid for. We've tried a couple of things in the past, community involvement, and asked them to help pay for it. And at the end of the day, we gathered a few $100, and the bill came back to the city for several thousand. So I'd really like to know more about that. But it's like anything else around all of us. If people want to do it, we have a good organization. We have the Historical Society. We have lots of people in the railroad industry who might want to do it. So it'd be interesting to see just how sincere people are to be able to do this project, because it's absolutely, I had no idea what I was looking at until I saw it, in the pictures, and now I understand it, and I could be very supportive of it.
Just, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say it's less of a question, more of a comment, but obviously I worked in Glendora for many years, and this is a complete coincidence because this came up on the agenda, Friday, but about a week ago, a few of us that used to work in the city saw some photos of the Gold Line construction going through the intersection there at Pasadena and the tracks in Glendora, and there was a photo of this structure. And I had commented to this group of ex-coworkers, like, I really always liked that structure. It's just a very cool looking old railroad structure, and I'm very excited to see that that somebody's thinking about preserving it, and that it would be coming to San Dimas. I really always have looked at that and thought, oh man, that's really cool that that's still there. So I'm very excited.
Eric, did you ask that this was placed on the agenda?
No, that I won't take credit for that.
Very good. I was going to say, to the mayor's point, I think tying this in with the city and in terms of the historical implication is huge, that if we were able to preserve this, install it, and then perhaps look at commissioning the artwork behind it, however that works out, that once the Gold Line is in place, it might be a cool commemorative event to talk about how mass transportation again is changing the community from the way it did many moons ago. So just ideas, but I think it's a cool thing, and I think it's a great piece of
I
history.
think once you had the bridge built and this up, then you'd have a better idea what it would look like.
Yeah.
But it sounds good, and we ought to thank the city of Glendora and thank their Historical Society and the railroads people for at least considering us, and this might be a good opportunity for us to do something. As I understand it, if we decide to go forward with it, it'll be picked up and moved to our city yard until we have time or
Yes. Part of it is that we, because of the time period and Gold Line's coming, it's pretty much one of the last pieces of railroad equipment that's still there. They need a direction on if the city's interested in having it in at this site. So what will happen is they'll remove it, we'll store it either up at Horse Thief or the yard, and get it prepped for restoration. In talking to Mr. Lasura, there's a lot of people that will donate in-kind contributions to restoring this whole thing, and a lot of railroad enthusiasts that will support the installation, which was my main question on what would be the cost to do this. And he feels certain that they'll be able to come up with the funding or donated time to do this.
Super. So what we need is just a consensus.
Mayor, we need to see if the public has any input on
I was
this.
wondering if Paul might want to say a few words. If Paul might want to say a few words.
Oh, okay, Paul.
Yes, I'd like to. Yes, I'm here, and thank you very much, City Council, for considering this project. To alleviate some of the concerns about the funding on this project, I want to let you know that the Foothill Extension Construction Authority is very generously donating several of these signals to local cities and to local railroad historical societies. And among them, one of these organizations operates the live steam locomotive, the Santa Fe 3751, which is stored down at Redondo Junction down in LA at the Amtrak facility down there. That organization has all of the talent that we need to restore this signal. That would include the pipe fitters, the steel fabricators, the welders, everything that we're going to need. And so we've got some leverage on those guys. They have promised me that if we give them the signal or signals that we are promising to give them, that they will respond to that with their donation of labor and materials. So my anticipation is that the city's not going to see any cost for this. All we're asking for is some cooperation from the building department in getting this through the city. And like I said, I don't think there's any issues with regard to that. As mentioned, there are National Railroad Historical Societies that are also interested, and they do have funding set aside for projects just like this. It's a very, very unique opportunity to rescue something, a technology that, my God, it's been gone for a long time. So thank you very, very much for considering this. And I'm going to work very closely with the Parks and Recreation staff, Tim, and the rest of the staff to make this happen. And thank you.
Sounds good. Okay, let's open it up to public comments.
Okay, go ahead. You're live. 3 minutes.
Okay, so I'm calling in regards to railroad signal, and I know there was mention on just relocating to it where the bridge would essentially be coming down and with a mural. But if that doesn't work out, because if I'm not wrong, that bridge's wall is not a solid block, which means if bridges tend to have a high chance of graffiti and stuff, so we just need to make sure that is taken into accountability, although I have heard that murals help to prevent. But also to be using that closer to the station as well, just to kind of give that kind of San Dimas welcome to the people that are on the train itself, to just kind of let them know where they are, because most people looking out the windows, you're probably not going to see what's the bottom of the bridge. And honestly, I don't think most people that have driven by that on Bonita have noticed it as it is. So it might also be a good suggestion to possibly relocate that closer to the actual Gold Line station where people can see it. Obviously, it cannot be over the Gold Line train because of the electric line, but possibly close to the station itself, maybe holding a sign saying it's, San Dimas or whatever, right outside where the city property would be. But just something that would signify a little bit more of what San Dimas is, because I know there was a lot of complaint from Mayor Bedar about the bridge several years ago when there was a discussion with the Gold Line in regards to how we were going to build a bridge that signified what our city was, because that essentially becomes a welcome from the city. But if you put it on the side where the park is, that's the exit from the city. So I don't know how that would actually play in. But another suggestion would be possibly putting it closer to where the actual Gold Line is for those that would be taking the train in. It's another way to also welcome them. I honestly think this is a really great idea, reusing that. Again, we're getting rid of so many of our original little characters for our town, from the wooden boardwalk to, the faces of our buildings on Bonita have all been kind of modernized a bit. So I definitely think this is worthy of putting funds from the city towards. I know there was mention as I was waiting on hold about funds being found elsewhere, but even if it's not, again, we did just give $10,000 to deputies that actually are not stationed at our station, but now we're qualming over the fact that we can't put money towards something that actually betters our community as well. So just some ideas. Hopefully you guys will support it. It's a good thing to support in our city. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. No more. That's it. All right. Do we just need a consensus, or do we need a vote here?
Yeah, I think there was a direction being requested.
Yeah, it would be approved to continue to explore relocating. If there is any cost or the status, we'll bring that back to council as we move forward with the process.
Second Dennis's motion.
Any more conversation? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. I think it's going to be a great addition to wherever we end up putting it. I think it's going to be one of those things here in the community that people are going to look at and say we're looking at our history. Okay, the train, we all know, and this is like someone said a few minutes ago, this is a whole new journey that we're on with coming back from 150 years ago to where we're going now. It's just a different thing. So I think that's going to be good. And once again, thank Glendora and the Train Society over there for at least keeping us in mind. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to the staff on a COVID-19 update.
Yes, Mayor, City Council. The city continues to work with businesses on various programs and opportunities to help. Earlier in the agenda, Council approved a new small business assistance program that will provide financial assistance and temporary relief to local businesses that have been impacted by COVID-19. The new CDBG 2020-21 program offers grants to businesses demonstrating need up to $5,000. These funds could be used for items such as rent, inventory, utilities, or equipment. The guidelines are in draft form. They still need to be approved by the Los Angeles County Development Authority, and once we receive approval, we'll be bringing it back to council, but that's just another COVID relief program that we're doing for our businesses. As of today, San Dimas, according to LA County Public Health dashboard, there have been 604 total reported cases, up 38 from 2 weeks ago, and 7,941 tests that have been completed, up 550 from 2 weeks ago. And there continues to be a total of 15 deaths in San Dimas, which is the same as 2 weeks ago. To view the full report, you can visit the LA County COVID-19 disaster dashboard. That concludes my COVID update.
Any questions?
I just wanted to piggyback on that. I was going to wait till my comments at the end, but I might as well talk about it now. You know, we hear about testing a lot, and thanks to some information from my son and daughter-in-law, actually, found out that the turnaround time at the Fairplex for the test is actually really fast. So you've heard about long wait times to get your results, 2 days, 3 days, a week, whatever. We've gone a couple times, actually. And so our pod, the four of us who live in our household, my wife and myself and son and daughter who live there, and the first time we went on a Saturday afternoon, like 1 o'clock, we had the results by Sunday, about 24 plus hours later. This past weekend, we went on a Friday and had the results early Sunday morning, 36 hours later. So in both cases, because we were clear and negative and everything, we were able to go and spend time with the pure pod of my son and daughter-in-law and the grandkids, and it was really nice. But it was a surprise to me that, and there's lots of appointments. So I'll put this on my Facebook page, but it's corona-virus.la. So the city of Los Angeles is actually coordinating this, even though they're county-run sites, but that's the website to go to, and there's some more instructions involved. But it was actually, besides the experience of how you have to do that test, and it's a self-administered test, it was great to get those results so fast and then be able to do things with people.
Super. Yeah, I hear that exactly what you said, John. Turnaround time is pretty quick. And having experienced the test that you don't administer to yourself, just yesterday morning, you're absolutely right. It's very it's pretty tricky and very uncomfortable. But with any further questions? Okay, I guess we'll move to the goal line update. I think we probably already talked about quite a bit of the goal line, but if you want to give us that, please.
I'll give a brief update. Staff conducted 2 outreach meetings with the downtown businesses on this past week, October 21st and 22nd. At those meetings, the city provided an update on goal line construction schedule and impacts to the downtown businesses. There was goal line representatives that were present and available to answer questions and concerns. Staff and the goal line are working with the businesses on ways to promote visitors, increase business, and advertise those businesses down there. There are approximately 30 businesses in attendance over the 2 days. In addition, there have been a lot of changes to the proposed schedule. The Gladstone closure is now projected to extend through November 15th. The delay in construction is due to cement shortages per the contractor. The contractor has submitted a major schedule revision on other locations and closures, which are still being reviewed by the Gold Line in the city and haven't yet to been approved. But once those are approved, I'll make sure to get that out. With that, that concludes my Gold Line update.
Questions? Do we need a no? Okay. Good. All right, members of the audience. Anybody like to call in now about any item that any item you want, really? You have about a minute, a couple minutes. No calls. Pardon me? Okay. No? No calls?
No calls.
Okay, I think we'll move on. City manager report.
Yeah, quickly, Mayor and City Council. Beginning last Saturday, October 24th, the Stanley Plummer and Community Building opened for in-person voting. The voting hours of operation are 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. until November 2nd. On November 3rd, the hours will be 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. There's also a voting drop box at the St. Dimas Library. In addition, the planning staff will be launching a housing element update survey to gauge the interest and comments of the community regarding the housing needs and related issues. The survey will run for approximately 1 month from the date of publication. Their goal is to go out on October 28th through December 6th. In order to obtain community involvement, in the survey, staff will utilize the city's social media accounts, leverage the connections with our housing element subcommittee group, social media, word of mouth, and place the survey in prominent locations on the city's website. The information obtained from the survey will assist in the development of the housing element update. If you have any questions, please feel free to call the Community Development Department. With that, that concludes City Manager comments.
Any questions? Okay. City Attorney?
No reports tonight, Mayor.
Members of the City Council, any council members reporting on meetings they attended at the expense of the local agency?
I think I reported the last meeting, the League of California Cities Conference, right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, all right, I'm good.
Okay. Councilman. Eric?
I don't have much. The only thing that I would mention, it's something that I experienced yesterday while working fires down in Orange County. Something that I didn't really consider until I saw it firsthand, and that was that with wildfires and especially wind-blown fires, the embers and everything that end up in neighborhoods and start small spot fires. I saw them frequently catching people's planters on fire with their wooden mulch. So that seemed to be the first thing that was catching on fire in people's yards was the wooden mulch around their house. And generally it's right at the base of the house and, obviously creates a huge potential for the house to catch on fire. Something that I didn't think of until I saw it happening firsthand, and I thought it was kind of neat, is the ability for homeowners that have either security cameras, internet-based security cameras, and also a Wi-Fi connected sprinkler controller. They were able to identify on video whether there was small spot fires in their yard and turn on their sprinklers to wet down their mulch and keep that from catching fire, which is really neat to see. The technology is helping us out in situations like that. You never know when stuff like that's really going to come in handy, but I think that's all I've got for today.
Dennis?
Sorry, yes, for me?
Yes.
last weekend, the city celebrated Halloween, and I understand it just went perfectly. And it really shows the imagination that our staff has in situations like this. And it was very successful. The other thing is that the Walker House Lucabella restaurant is now open on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evenings for dinner. And it wouldn't hurt, we want to help local businesses. So if you're looking for some place to go to dinner on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday evening, try Lucabella restaurant at the Walker House. And that is it.
Super. John?
Okay, just a couple things. I wanted to announce, a lot of you have already heard about this probably, but the Laverne San Dimas Education Foundation is sponsoring a 5K, the Bonita 5K. It's one of those where you do it yourself. Registration, I think, is already open, and you run, ride, whatever, a 5K between November 8th and the 28th. So I'm just going to post the information on Facebook, but if you have a pen and paper or a good memory, it's wellness4busd.com. Wellness, the number 4busd.com is where you register. You can get a T-shirt and everything else and get in shape. So that's the whole point of that. The only other thing was that we got a summary of a Planning Commission action on SP 23, I believe. And it turns out that a notification had not gone out to residents for the Planning Commission meeting. It was a public hearing. So I guess they have to take a step back, Jeff, if I'm not mistaken, or planning. You have to re-notice and send out the notification to everybody within, 500 feet or something like that, and then re-have the public hearing? Is that
That's right. I was notified by staff that there was, the planning staff did not send out the mailed notice to residents within 300 feet of that area. And so because of that, at the next Planning Commission meeting, which I believe is November 5th, is that right? The item will be re-noticed. It'll be mailed out to the residents within 300 feet, and then the Planning Commission will re-hold the hearing, so it'll be properly noticed.
And that will be a recommendation to the City Council, I believe, and then City Council will have another public hearing at some time to be scheduled.
That is correct.
Now, on that, if my fellow council members might like the idea, that's got a lot of interest, and I don't know how far 300 feet goes. It goes about a block or so, half a block really. And so I was wondering if we could extend that to like 1,000 feet, because there's just a lot of people, unless there's another way of getting information out. I know that a lot of people should be interested in it, including those who don't live nearby. But typically, when there's an issue like this, we want to have as much participation as possible by the neighboring people. That's the whole point of the law. The law may require 300 or 500 feet, whatever it is, but I think in a case like this, we might want to go farther. I'm just thinking.
Well, I was thinking 500 feet, and now you kind of blew me. 1,000 feet's a long way, but I would say 500 to 1,000. Leave it up to the planning staff for when they look around that, see if 1,000 feet what it's going to bring versus that. But you're absolutely right. It is an issue that's got a lot of attention, and so I wouldn't have a big problem with it. But I would like the planning staff. I just don't want to send 1,000 feet to and have lots of vacant spaces and stuff. So.
I'm not inclined to support more than the 300, largely because the same group that's organized to be vocal, I'm sure, is very much aware of the issue, and the reach, to your point, to get it out to beyond that, I think needs other tools, whether we do a social media video perhaps, to be able to capture the people in the other segments of the community. So while I understand the 1,000 feet issue, I suspect 300 feet is going to be enough to activate that community to notify their neighbors. But I think to get those other people that you're talking about that are going to be greater than 300, 1,000, a mile is going to take a different median. And for staff, what's a mailer cost anyways? What are we talking between? What's $1,000? What's $1,000 mailer versus a 300 mailer?
I mean, it's like what, 50 cents a postage. So I don't know how many houses 1,000 feet will reach. Let's just call it 100. So $50 or whatever in postage for sending those out, plus the envelope materials and the printing materials or whatever that costs. So
And,
call it $100 or something.
I just don't know if the ROI. I mean, if you guys want to do it, I'm indifferent about it. I just think the expenditure for the ROI, when I think that community is very much aware and tracking this. Once the notice goes out, I'm sure the channels will get it out to that impacted community, and then we need to talk about how we engage the remainder of the community. But that's my thought.
So this is not on the agenda. So we really, I guess by making that suggestion, I opened up a can of worms. So I'll just make this general comment. Whenever we do have a project of any kind that requires notification, and some of these ones that require notification are small projects, and they're not of great interest, so you do the minimum, and that's fine. Others have a more impact. I'm just saying in general, and we can think of a lot of projects that would fall into that category, not just this one. And we can't rely on even if we know that a neighborhood group is interested and is going to put out the word, that neighborhood group doesn't have everybody's address and communication with everybody in the neighborhood. There may be plenty of people, and remember, it goes to property owners, I believe. Isn't that right? As opposed to the residents themselves, or does it do both?
I'm assuming it would just be.
I think for such an important issue, it doesn't hurt to expand.
But yes, that's a general comment, and in general, and we've done this before. When it's a really big issue like this, we expand the area, just in general. So I think we should just leave it to planning staff, and that's my thought on that. And that's all I have.
I think the planning staff should be able to look into it and realize it, because there were a lot of people at those meetings who were not actually residents in that particular area. They came from different parts of the community. So we could get into a situation where we're mailing all over San Dimas, because I do know of people that have requested specifically to be notified. So I think I'd leave it up to the planning staff to use some good common sense and the best way to do it. And, as Ryan said, social media, there are people out there. But I'm not opposed to expanding it to some reasonable limit.
Yeah, I can go along with a reasonable limit, but I'm going to trust you guys. I don't want to see an expenditure that is going to be significant that has minimal ROI when it would have engaged that same community group, who I happen to have spoke with members of that community group as recent as today. So they're very much tracking it, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'll verify with the planning staff, but my understanding with all these community meetings and with the previous public hearings, we actually did a mailer that included, I think, like south of Gladstone, like Walnut, north of Bonita. Like, we encompassed greater than the 300 feet. And I think we've been doing that for these meetings, that for SP 23 particularly. But legally, it's 300 feet typically for public hearings, but staff has been cognizant of the sensitivity for this type of issue and other types of sensitive projects. So, but I'll verify that with planning staff.
Yeah, I would just like you to make sure that people who have attended that meeting before put their names on a list and said, please let me know, because we do have residents in Villa Verde who've done it, who showed up at those meetings because they were interested. And even as far as up on Terrebonne and stuff like that. So if they got their name on that list, let's just make sure that they get some type of notification.
Yeah. And I'll verify that the people that attended the community meetings, I believe we sent the notices out to them as well, but I'll verify that as well.
When is the city council going to hear that, Henry?
I'd have to verify. So it's after the recommendation from Planning Commission that we can actually agendize that. So the Planning Commission has to make that recommendation before we actually notice it. So I'm assuming if it's next week, the first I would think like the first meeting in December, probably. It's about a month after.
But the planning commission is going to have to hear it again, so first week in December is pretty short. Because they got it, that notification has to go out to them. Then there has to be a notification for the council.
So the planning commission, that notice already went out.
Okay.
For the next week's meeting. When it goes out to city council, we'll verify again the notices that go out, and then we'll make sure that we send it out to all the people that were part of the community meetings.
You know, in rethinking this right now, I think we need a city council actual decision on this one. So I'd like to agendize it. And simply because I'd like to get staffs, as the mayor says and others, there are many people who are interested in this, not just within 500, 1,000, or whatever feet. So what is the plan to let the entire community know about it? There's probably lots of ways of doing it. And then the actual legal requirement, that expansion, which, as I say, we've done many times for things and gone to 1,000 feet for lots of issues, you know, whether it's Walnut Creek or something else, which is, you know, very important issues. I think the council needs to actually make a decision on that.
And Councilmember Ebner, you're saying you want a future agenda item to decide what the noticing will be for when it gets to council?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not supportive of that for this specific issue. However, I am supportive of a conversation regarding the parameters of this. I think it's important that legally required noticing is not leverage for political gain. And so when we start talking about expanding things into an area that might only encompass an area that is specifically interested, that extends well beyond whatever that specified area is, then we kind of get into this discussion about picking and patching who it is that we rope into a discussion. So I think there's a broader conversation about setting a very specific parameter on how it is that we're going to do this and standardize it across the board so it's clear. And I think that the city already has tools that we're very much aware of, which is the posting at the post office, at the Vaughn Shopping Center, as well as on our website. I think we already have these tools. And while civic engagement is very important, I think there's a fine line that we have to walk, and we should have a conversation about specifying a policy that just hands down is what it is, and we don't vary from it. And if that includes people signing up because they're interested and want to be notified, then perhaps we should do that.
You know, this is not an item that
this is the kind of
on the agenda
discussion that we would have at the agenda.
So I'm saying I'm not supportive of a specific discussion limited to this particular initiative. I'm okay with the discussion on the broader policy issue for the council to decide. Okay, that's what my point was.
Okay. But the request from Councilmember Ebner is for a discussion about noticing for the SP23 item. So if there is another council member who wants to have that future agenda item, then you can say so now.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Okay. So that'll be agendized.
Thank you. And I'll have other comments to make. I'm not disagreeing with you necessarily, but I have other things to say, but now is not the time to say them.
Okay. So, Jeff, you'll go ahead or Brad, you'll go ahead and agendize it, and then we can have a discussion there. And then we can actually talk about that discussion that we may have for a broader picture. If we want to do, we'll be able to talk about it at a retreat or something like that, where we can get some type of policy with where we're going with this.
So just to clarify, Mayor, the item that we're bringing back is specific to SP 23 and the noticing, but at a workshop or a different item you're going to talk about. That's why I want a clarification.
No, as soon as it's my time to speak, I'll bring this up, Brad.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. And then knowing how the planning commission or the city's going to notify people, because you might have a suggestion that we're not thinking about, or there's additional to it, or whatever.
Okay.
Okay. And that's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Well, anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
All right, Ryan.
Cool. So I would actually like to have a conversation before that particular conversation to be able to establish a criteria standardized for the council to be able to use as a governing decision as it relates to this, because I do think it's a much broader conversation than specifically SP 23. So for all of the aforementioned reasons, I don't know if anybody else is interested in that or just want to take one decision and piecemeal it out.
Yeah, I don't mind talking about that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, just saying I wouldn't mind talking about that issue as well.
Cool.
Can we do them both at the same time, or what's the deal?
If the staff has the time to get them both on the same meeting, then we can do that.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to staff and see exactly what would be included in this report, and then bring it back to council.
Could that all be one discussion, or no?
My request is for a separate discussion on SP 23 notification. And I believe that's the more pressing issue. It has to be done pretty quickly. So, I mean, I don't mind having them at the same meeting, but I'd like to have the SP 23 first.
Okay, and then, Eric, you want to hear what
Yeah,
Ryan's asking?
I mean, having a standard is a good
Well,
thing. And so
well,
if we don't have that conversation, then we don't have a
If you
standard.
won't mind, talk to the staff, figure out what we can do, try to get them both on at the same time, or one right after the other, and then go from there.
And if it comes down to it, at the meeting, when they're both on the same agenda, the council may have to vote to decide which one you want to hear first, if there's a disagreement about that.
Okay.
All right, cool. So moving on, back in 2018, the City Council voted to support Proposition 20. I encourage all members of the community to support Proposition 20. You can go ahead and look at keepcaliforniasafe.org. Has some valuable resources as it relates to Proposition 20, but in Cliff Notes version is it changes a number of deficiencies that came out of Prop 47 and Prop 57 as it relates to property crimes, assaults, and things like this. So it reinstitutes some of the penalties and helps keep our community safe. Over the week, I had the opportunity to look at and watch the Bonita Unified School District Candidates Forum. I applaud all of the candidates that participated in that forum. They did a pretty good job of conveying their messages, and so it takes some courage to get up there, and I'm very proud of everybody that engaged in those discussions. With that, election time is upon us, and so make sure you vote. You can vote now at our voting center here at the Stanley Plummer Building, and then you can vote as we get into the weekend and into next week. But that being said, it's very important that you vote early. Last election, some people may recall, we had people get in line pretty early and stay pretty late. I think the last voter voted somewhere around 11 p.m. And, if you get in line, as long as you get in line before the polls close, which I think is 8 o'clock, is that right? 8, yep. 8 o'clock, then you'll be permitted to vote, as long as it takes. I do want to thank the school district. The staff did reach out to the school district trying to see if we could find an alternate location to be able to stand up a relief voting center. Unfortunately, in the logistics of getting that done, we didn't get enough time to get a response from the county to be able to stand that up. Hopefully, in the next election, we'll be able to solidify that, as it seems that we have one of the larger voting centers. But to that point, that's why it's important that you come out and you vote now. There's not a lot of wait or a lot of line if you come and vote the Stanley Plummer Building between now and probably this weekend. But last election, come Monday, I think it was Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, it picked up pretty good. And, it was very noticeable to the poll workers. And then election day itself was actually pretty challenging. People were calling, going from here to, I think, the Fairplex and somewhere else. And so avoid all of that. Come in, vote early, and get it done. Lastly, I just wanted to commend staff. I heard a lot of great things about the Halloween events over the weekend. I think that is fantastic. We were able to go ahead and pull that off. I'm very encouraged to hear some of the outside-of-the-box thinking as it relates to the holiday extravaganza events, or the 12 Days of Christmases, if you will. I look forward to hearing Emmett Carroll, and I can't wait for that. Other than that, I did have the opportunity to attend a golf course committee meeting. That was pretty interesting, and I was there with Brad and with Emmett and some of the commissioners and the folks from the golf course. And so a lot of interesting things the city's involved with, the golf course being one of them. Some good things coming. I encourage everybody to go up there and swing a club every once in a while. I chop grass, and I'll see you up there, and I'll chop some grass with you if you want to go up and do that. Nevertheless, have a safe week until we talk again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for the discussions. Okay, just a few things real quick. One, probably more important than anything I'm going to say is I want to reach out and say happy birthday to Aileen Kranzer. She's been a resident in San Dimas and a very motivating force around here in getting a lot of things done. We have a sidewalk project going across the street at the community park that Eileen and Margie Green were very, very, I don't want to say pushy, but they wanted that sidewalk over there, and they're getting it. It's being done as we now. As I came to council tonight, I saw the lights that are on. They're working fine. Looks like the sidewalk project is going pretty quickly, and it's hopefully within the next month or two, we'll have people walking around it, and they can use that as an extra place to go walk during these tenuous times that we're having. But it's going well, and I want to thank Parks and Rec and Public Works. It's moving a lot quicker than I thought. Once you found some cement that has been on a shortage, it's actually going very, very well. Okay. The other thing I wanted to say is I did have an opportunity to vote today here at our polling center, and it went very quickly. They seem to know exactly what they're doing, and it was a very easy process. One of the questions that came up is people kept walking up wanting to know where to put their ballots in, just to put them in the box. And there is a box on the other side by the library. There's a box there. Okay? But a few people were concerned, having seen in the news about people, setting those boxes on fire and stuff like that. So they really wanted to just get their ballot inside the deal. So on the south side of the Plummer Building, there is a doorway. If you walk right in there, you give it to an attendant there, or they have a box there, and they'll take it, and it's inside the actual Plummer Building, and you don't have to wait in line, and it's securely, secure. So, as Ryan said, voting is, very important. So let's all get out there and vote, and hopefully have a very successful election on November 3rd, a calm one. The other thing is it's kind of personal. I've been asked to be the co-chair of by the Masonic Lodge and the San Dimas Rotary to participate in a warm weather clothing drive for North Dakota. They've got people gathering jackets, and a co-chair with a guy named Greg Pilato. He happens to be running for school board, but he's a resident over in Laverne, and he's on the Rotary Commission or Rotary Club. And with that being said, anyone who has old jackets in their garage or their closets or wherever you have them that your wives are telling you to get rid of, feel free to reach out and get a hold of either Greg or myself, and I'll give you my cell phone number, and I'll make arrangements to try to get them picked up or get you a place that you can deliver. And that's area code 909-322-1111. And the date of the event is November the 8th. So we need to get those jackets picked up, and I'm quite sure that the people and the kids over in North Dakota will appreciate knowing that San Dimas helped out with their winter, so an early Christmas. And that's really about it. Any further questions from anybody? Okay. Tonight is a closed session, conference with labor negotiators, and a public employee appointment, city manager. So this meeting will be adjourned, and we'll be ready in 10 minutes.